Greetings, Minecrafters, and welcome to another Minecraft discussion on this delightful morning in the woods in northern Vermont. There's little G back there just waiting for me to take off again. He's kind of gotten used to our drill and inspiration bridge, so I always forget if I said my name or not again. I'll say it again. My name is Kimberly Quinn, and I'm just so thrilled to have this discussion. I just get so caught up in like the inspiration of it all that I think I forget what I say 2 seconds in, you know what I mean? So anyway, so today I wanted to talk about sort of being mindful of projection, and this has lots to do with the ego, and an unchecked ego is dangerous spiritually and just can cause great harm to ourselves and others. And it's a much bigger conversation than just projection. But obviously I want to keep these shorter for you and me because I think they're more digestible, and then people get more meaning, you know, when it's not too much, you know, right? So projection, as many of you may know, is actually a Freudian concept, defense mechanism. And even though Freud, you know, people can have a lot to say about Freud for sure. And he's also outdated. And he smoked enough cocaine to knock over a rather large horse, although his intentions were good. We can talk about that later. But I think it indisputably, regardless of the outdated stuff and who says what about him with his cigar being a cigar and all that stuff, there are a couple of things I don't think anyone would take away from him, and you just have to give him credit. He kind of discovered the unconscious mind and the power of the unconscious mind. That's all him. And he also did all that at a time without technology, where a lot of people weren't even literate. I mean, if you put it together, you know, even despite what people say about him, he definitely he had some pretty good accomplishments, pretty solid stuff that we kept. Anyway, so projection would also fall along the lines of the unconscious mind, because defense mechanism, which is a phrase most people know. In fact, if you stood outside of your local grocery store and randomly polled, let's say 200 people, just ask them to name a psychologist, I would say hands down they're going to say Freud, even though, you know, he's one people come up with. Well, there's a reason, even if he's outdated and all that other stuff. Okay, so projection is a defense mechanism, again, a phrase that most of us have heard, and we do this when we are feeling in some way underneath. It doesn't have to be all and out attacked. And on the scale, remember spectrums, right? We can feel threatened way over here. We can feel just a little bit threatened. You know, maybe we're in the workplace and somebody said something that sounded a little more intelligent than we did, but it's like a topic we've studied forever, and it was just this much, and they didn't even mean it. Like, to read this article, like, what do you have to hear what I have to say, kind of thing. So we are trying to defend ourselves from a small area, middle, and maybe even to a large area, and it's unconscious. That's the important. A lot of bugs here today. It's okay though. There we go. We're trying to kind of defend ourselves, and this is all ego, because the authentic self. This one is residing right on my. Oh, there we go. All done now. Too bad, so sad. There you go. Okay, so. Where was I? Okay. Ego and frame. Okay, there we go. When we're living inside our frames, we're not feeling offended or a need to defend. Even if we're entirely in the right, the authentic self knows that she, he, they, we don't have to prove anything because we're living in our authentic frame. It doesn't mean we don't say something that's necessary with kindness, with honesty and kindness to that person. But we're not all like the Shenpa alert. Remember that feeling, that surge? We feel like we have to bite the hook and I'll show you and don't you do that to me. We don't feel that, even if they're legitimately not in the right, because it's more important to be kind than right. Or even if we have to say something, but there's not like this big reactive thing. You know, it's not this big reactive thing. It's coming from a place of calm and inner peace, even if we have to say something to the person, right? So the projection thing is really important to be mindful and ask yourself the next time you're judging or criticizing, because we all do, even when we're aware of it, we all fall into it on occasion. So even if it's silent, nobody hears but you. Well, I can't believe she went back to him after he treated her last weekend, and all those people knew, and she must have been humiliated. Okay, even if that's just running through our head, what is our need to step out of our frame and criticize or judge that person? So this is, again, even if it's silent, this will actually be a good growth experience, even when we're just silent in our own heads. Or if we can run this dialogue as far as, you know, ego checking ourselves with a safe person, you know, a spouse or a best friend, and say, look, you know what? please don't let this go anywhere. This is in confidence. I just caught myself the other day, you know, so-and-so that she works there, and I just caught myself. It's not even my business. And she's being so mistreated, and how does she go back to him? And if I were her, I'd want to punch him right in the nose, you know, and just say, and you know what? That's got to be about me, right? I must be projecting my own, we'll just say stuff to work on. I don't like the word weakness. When we are getting all into somebody else's drama and life and business, not that we can't have genuine care and concern. We can, though if we're really, truly honest, there's often some criticizing and judgment attached. And again, remember that projection, all the defense mechanisms of Freud are unconscious. And so remember, we're not necessarily doing it on purpose. And so it's important when we become aware. Remember, that's number one with anything. Oh, little G, so sweet. Once we become aware, we become responsible. My good friend Dr. Dave says that a lot. So when we're criticizing and judging, remember, as human beings, we don't do anything either unless there's payoff in it. Anything. And that payoff can be really good, like holding a door open for somebody who's, you know, a gazillion months pregnant and they're struggling to get, and then we have a feel-good feeling and it felt nice to be, you know, useful and things like that. There's payoff there, but judgment is such a payoff, and criticizing is such a payoff. Why? Because it feels so good in that moment. Why? Because we have elevated ourselves at someone else's expense. Once we put it that way, we're like, oh, don't I feel awful? Yeah, because there's a half-life. And when we do that, after that initial, you know, fix, we don't feel well. We don't feel good about it. And it further brings us down, pulls us further out of our frame and away from our authentic path. However, in that moment, you know, it's like waving a chocolate bar in front of us, because it just, especially if there are other people involved in the gossip or the condemnation, let's say, or even if it's something small and ridiculous, that's the us, them, you know, like they're the common enemy thing. Even if the person we're talking about isn't necessarily an enemy, it might be somebody we care about. I know, we're coming, G. It's very, very important to realize that when we are doing even the slightest bit of judging and criticizing, even if there's an element of care this much, we are trying to elevate ourselves at the expense of someone else, which isn't different. It means I shouldn't say it isn't different. It's in the same family, though it's not the same necessarily. It's in the same family as what bullies do. They're coming from a place of insecurity, and when they, you know, knock a kid over for her milk money or whatever, there's an instant elevation over that person. And now make it in a different context when we're in, maybe in the workplace, and again, like with, maybe it's even in, maybe it's in, not even, that's dumb. Maybe it's in academia or whatever, and we just need to sound smarter, brighter, more knowledgeable. Maybe we have mechanical skills, and so-and-so just fixed a car, and, well, did you know you could have done that with your catalytic converter? Yeah, all of that is, we have a need to bring ourselves up at somebody else's expense, even if it's so super subtle. Like, we're really good people. It doesn't mean you're a horrible, evil demon. Though the bully crew can be very toxic, it's still the same family, and we're pulled into it. So it's important to ask yourself, when we are feeling that need, that shenpa, that Sanskrit word, remember when somebody says something snarky or does something to us, it's whatever, and we have that urge to get them back, like, you know, even if it's verbally, like, did you know, you know, but when we have that, that is the ego. That is the ego. So the best thing to do is be aware of it, and then ask yourself, what is in your head, am I projecting my own stuff I need to work on? My thing with, let's say, that other story about the woman in the not good relationship. You know, do I feel insecure about being left alone? Do I feel insecure about how I'm treated? Do I sometimes let people treat me at a level that's less than what I deserve? Ask yourself that stuff, because we're really, really, truly honest. More than likely, there's some of that stuff there. And then lastly, one of the easiest, we have the stuff we need to work on and all that. One of the easiest emotions to project, I should say most common. That's what I want to say. Most common emotions to project is shame. Why? Because it's so incredibly toxic and so incredibly excruciating to feel that we want to get rid of it. Like the game hot potato. We want to just like toss it to somebody else. And it's certainly very prevalent in addicted homes. It doesn't have to be addicted homes, but addicted homes are like a breeding ground for shame. And remember that this is unconscious. So addicted parents, codependent addicted parents, because that's like a double, that's redundant, because codependency is addiction. But anyway, all the enabling, all that stuff, and they often throw that shame onto the other partner. They often throw that shame onto friends, and they most definitely throw that shame onto their children because it's so easy. They can't really fight back. And remember, it's all unconscious before we start judging all the addictive behavior, right? It's all unconscious because I'm in so much pain myself that I'm throwing it onto my kids. Does that make it okay? Absolutely not. It's awful. It's terrible. And it needs work. It needs work. However, I wanted to explain from one who's also experienced it, once you come out of that, you step out as a grown-up and you can look back and reflect without blame and without all that stuff. Just, wow, the cycle of that and the intensity and really the dysfunction is actually fascinating when you can step out and look back without, not saying any of it's okay. Nobody gets a pass for sure, especially when it comes to an adult and a child. No way do they get a pass. I'm just saying that once you step out of it and you can start to understand, it just gives you, it's enlightening. I guess that's the best way to say it. Okay, so the next time you feel the need to criticize, judge, check if you are projecting. Also emotionally, you're feeling the need to do, and dump it out like a little dump truck. Check if you're projecting, because we can bring that unconscious stuff into the conscious, and then everybody's better off. You are, the people in your life are. It's just, honestly, if we all did that, imagine if the whole globe, was aware of projecting shame. Wow. And we just alleviated it. Be a way better place. Would be hardly any problems, I think. Anyway, okay. This is Kimberly Quinn signing off from the beautiful Notch in northern Vermont. Have a mindful day.